Today we're going to see if we can turn the Banshee Paradox into a cross-country bike. You know we love to experiment on this channel and try weird out-of-the-box things. Today we're going to make this more cross-country than it already is. Really all it is an enduro bike with cross-country race wheels right now. We're going to swap out the fork for a 120mm Fox Stepcast 34, which will bring the weight down significantly and change a lot of the geometry. Let me talk you through that just a little bit. We're going to get a little bit technical and learn about geometry today. This frame is built for a 130 to 150 fork. That's how much travel there is here. That's how much the suspension can travel from all the way smashed to all the way open. A lower fork will result in a lower front end, and it will change this head tube angle and how it steers. So as we turn this into an XC bike, everything's gonna pivot around the rear axle. So basically everything's gonna drop. Let me show you what I mean. We're gonna steal the XC fork off of this bike. This is the Spot Rive 115. It's my XC full suspension trail bike, and it's fantastic for long days in the saddle. I took it on my 60-mile Black Canyon in a day trip, and I loved it for that. This fork is significantly lighter than the Pike on my Banshee, so we're gonna take this off, put it on, see how it does. This bike is under 25 pounds as a full suspension. That's really light. Yes, there are lighter race XC bikes, but this is one of the lightest bikes I've ever had long term. It's been fun. And it's surprisingly not sketchy despite how light it is. Let's see if we can carry any of that over to the Banshee. All right. Always sad seeing a bike without its parts. So the axle to crown measurement is from the axle to the crown. That tells you how high your front end is gonna sit before you buy a fork or something. Ironically, it's easier to measure it than to look it up online. These manufacturers have not made it easy to find. So this one is about 530. For every 20 millimeters you change from axle to crown across forks, you alter the head angle by 1 degree. Pay attention here, this is important. So if we shorten it by 20 mil, we steepen the head angle by 1 degree. And we also steepen the seat angle, and the bottom bracket drops because everything pretty much pivots on that rear axle and sinks down. This was actually a 64.5 how I have it set up with the 150 fork, but we're going from that to a 66 degree head angle, which is still extremely modern today. A lot of the bikes I review have 66 head angles. So this is gonna ride like an XC bike, hopefully, with modern geometry, and that's gonna be exciting to see what it's like. In this setup, it did just fine, but I didn't end up using most of the travel because I was kind of scared to push this bike because these tires were a little bit sketchy. So it's going to be interesting to see if I can get this to feel better as an XC bike or if it just feels even worse. And it's cool to see that you can build up hardtails in so many different configurations, and really just changing a few things like fork and wheels will completely change the nature of the bike. I want to see what happens to the Banshee when it's in the exact opposite end of the spectrum. Ultralight wheels, super small fork. In fact, the fork's smaller than recommended, but we'll be okay. Bottom bracket might be lower and might lead to more pedal strikes, but that's okay. For the sake of this test, no big deal. This fork is meant for a 180mm with no spacer. This fork's meant for a 160mm. So I have to run a 20mm spacer on here to make the 180mm rotor fit. Basically, if you're racing XC, they figure you're not going to need the massive brakes from the enduro bikes because you're not hitting those speeds, and their courses don't require you to hit crazy stuff. So they can save weight by going with a lighter rotor. I love how 9.8 uses a 4mm for every single thing. That makes life so much easier. I wish we would just go to 4mm for everything. All right, fork, you're coming with me. Pike is still a light fork, don't get me wrong, it's quite light. Oh, another thing you need to check is that the race is the same. I'm running the same headset in both bikes, so I'm okay. Cool, that looks good. Pretty funny how just looking at it, it looks totally different with this light fork and these light wheels. And to be honest, there's not a whole lot more to change about this. If you were gonna make it an XC race bike, you'd probably run super light cranks. And that's it. I got carbon bars, really nice stem. Everything else is pretty dang light. Now, if you're racing XC, you're gonna have a super light frame, but I'm gonna have to give that spot back one day, and that's gonna be a sad day. I love that bike, even though it's not a hardtail. That thing is cool. It's just a demo bike, just a loaner. All right. Man, this wheel is light, seriously light. Because this fork has less travel, it doesn't need to be as strong as my last one, which means they can make it lighter. They've even carved out some of the fork area here to make it even lighter. Here's a tip, keep your fingers away from rotors when they're spinning. You can chop off part of or all of your finger when that wheel is spinning. The rotor, it's nasty, but the rotor can get in the way. I don't know that it feels any lighter. That looks so funny how slack it is. That's crazy. And 120 mil travel doesn't look bad on this. It looks about right. Very interesting. So can you build a Banshee up to be a super light trail bike if you don't ride super technical terrain? Sure you can, but let's see if it's a good idea. So let's explain what happened with the geometry. Basically, the front end is now almost an inch lower. The bars are lower. The seat is steeper. The bottom bracket is lower. Everything's just pivoted on the rear axle. But that still looks sweet. Look how slack that thing is. And we never do slackness for looks. That drives me crazy. When people want a slacker bike so it looks slack, who cares what it looks like? We want the benefits of the handling at faster speed. I'm excited. Now have an XC Banshee Paradox V3, or as close to XC as it's ever gonna get under me. Still have a dropper. It still has that compliant frame. This is gonna be cool. We got good brakes on it. We got good, really light wheels. The only thing I would change if I had the budget is the tires. I don't like these tires. And it's too bad because that really changes how the bike rides. Because yeah, that's your contact point with the ground. That's where your traction is. But in the next episode, we're gonna take this out on an XC loop and see what it's like. I'm not an XC racer. I have raced XC in the past, non-professionally. I don't like racing. It makes me nervous. I don't enjoy it. I end up throwing up half the time. I'm not good at pacing myself. It basically takes everything I love about riding, takes that away and adds all the things I hate about competition and all that stuff. I'm not a racer. So this is never going to be an XC race bike, but it is interesting to see what it's like in that format. This could be a really great trail bike for a lot of people. All right, let's weigh it. That's the last thing we got to do because this is a super light fork. 26.3. That's pretty light. How could we go lighter? Cranks. No water bottle cage. Take off the bash guard. No dropper, but that kind of defeats the point of riding for me if you can't have a dropper. Sweet, so it's not like featherweight, but that's a pretty light bike right there. We could run smaller rotors, that would save a few grams. I'm running cush core in the back, you could take that out, but here I definitely want that. All right, this has been fun. Let's take this out to the trails in the next episode and see what it's like.